we only had one person that's ever auditioned for us before that was available. And we were still able to fill an 11-person cast.
Right. So with that, like, going forward, what are some of the things that that you've learned from this that you want to take forward? And I assume that'll be the next season?
Yes, we're working on the next season right now. Some of the things that I've noticed that work really well and that really seem to resonate as far as what sets us apart are our Greek translations. We did Prometheus, which was a very stylized piece. True Love is a riff on the Hippolytus story. So those things are things that we can look at going forward as what I can bring. I'm very heavily influenced by physical acting styles. So I always look for things that aren't necessarily non-realistic, but that can give actors a sense of how important their body is in relation to the script, rather than just getting on stage and debating.
Now, will you continue to be in residency at Edinburgh University?
We hope so. We have not got the official word yet. It's a 1-year trial run so that both sides can see what works, what didn't, and what needs to be improved for next year. But I'm hoping that with the response that we've gotten from the students, that we've gotten from administration that have come to see the show, that we've got from the reviews from Erie, from all of our audiences, that both sides will see that this is working very well for everyone involved.
And you've mentioned, you're able to contribute basically some knowledge that a lot of people in the area don't have. I mean, you do have your doctorate, and as you mentioned, with the different history of theater, what is it that you bring with your understanding of history and theory that makes this endeavor unique?
Well, one of the things that I think my education plays a good role in is all of the different isms that have existed throughout theater. In American theater, we tend to go mostly with realism, that there's that sense that method acting is what everyone knows, so that's how we tend to go about things. So we look for things that can be realistically portrayed. I think that I bring a much different take because I can look at surrealism and absurdism and all of those things that I've spent years working on, and show them to people that might not understand them very well, or may have read about it but have never seen it in practice or tried to do those things.
Now, with that, you mentioned the physical aspect. What is some of your background as far as the physicality?
My dissertation was on Antonin Artaud and the theater of cruelty, and he felt that one of the things that theater should do is fight to make sure that the audience was active and not passive. And by that he meant an audience that just sits there kind of on their hands and takes everything in and forms a logical argument while it's going on, isn't connected. He wanted to create a theater that actively engaged the audience and made them look all around and take in everything so that they were completely engaged in the process. And with that, it's very heavily influenced by the power of gesture and movement and space, having actors in the audience or surrounding the audience in some form so that it breaks that traditional fourth wall that we have that separates actors from audience in most shows.
Let's talk about the space. So you're in the Old Union Theater, the Deep Old Theater, has various names, and what are the benefits that you think of being in that particular space versus being in something a little bit more traditional like the Playhouse, or even just a basic proscenium thing, proscenium space like they have in all an act?
Well, what's nice about this is when you walk in, it's an open oval, and then there's a running track around the top because it used to be the old gymnasium and the student union many, many years ago. So you've got the ability to put the stage wherever you want, and put the audience wherever you want. And with the running track, you can put actors up there, so you've got levels that you can use already. The lighting is set up so that you can have a show in traditional seating where there's audience and then the stage. Or you could have the thrust situation where you've got audience on 3 sides, or do it in the round with audience on every side. Or set it up even more different than that and have just different pools of audience everywhere. So it gives you the ability to really create a space that works for however you need it to.
Now, what have you been able to do so far as that space goes with the shows that you've done, and what do you still want to do?
Well, with Prometheus, we put it in the round, and we actually had ropes come down from the track so that not only was the audience on every side, but the action came up and down, and with the ropes tied to Prometheus, it actually bridged both spaces so that there was a physical connection throughout most of the show. Then for It's a Wonderful Lie, we had it set up in traditional proscenium stage with the stage and then the actors and then the audience. And for this show, we're moving it to a different side, so it's still going to be a same basic proscenium setup, but on a different wall there so that it's wider. I would like to find ways to actually put pockets of audience at some point, so that rather than 4 different audience parts, there may be 5 pools of audience all facing semi in the same direction, possibly different, almost like lounge seating at a comedy club. And have the audience then be a part of the actual stage so that the actors are going in and out of these spaces and acting between the spaces. I think that's something that space works good with. I don't have a script necessarily that fits that, but it's always one of those things that I try and push to get away from proscenium style blocking, if at all possible. Because I think with the other forms, it really connects the actors and audience much faster.
Now, what are some of the lessons that you've, I guess, learned in obstacles maybe that you weren't expecting? That, you're figuring out new ways to help overcome?
Well, one of the things that I think is both a blessing and a curse is that there are so many new theaters that have started up that there's lots of competition, but it also pushes everyone to do their best. With so many theaters that had closed, one of the obstacles instantly was getting people to commit to working with a theater that had never been here before, that they weren't sure if it would still be around or even make it through the first show, because they've never worked with us. I was gone from the area for 6 years. That's an entire generation almost of actors that have completely gone away.
Do you think you've been able to overcome that possible concern?
Yes. Like I mentioned, we had so many new actors for Prometheus. And then for It's a Wonderful Lie, we had all new actors. For this show, we have all new actors. And we started bringing people in from the Erie area to work on our shows. And once you get that name recognition and the fact that it's actors that people have seen in other places, Nick Cocola is in our True Love cast, and you can see him just about everywhere. So the fact that these people that have worked in other theaters are coming out here, I think helps show that we're doing something good out here.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's, you mentioned, that there's a lot of new theaters, and yeah, there is. John Shop's doing a lot of great new pieces. You've mentioned, there's even still relatively young, places like All in Act. They've been around for 10 years, but that's not 100 years, like the Playhouse is getting drastically close to. Now, with that, though, I guess my question becomes, how do you then want to continue to grow? If you were to say, and I know this is a long way away, especially for like a community theater situation, what would be the 5-year plan? What would be that kind of wish list, as it were?
I'm hoping that every year we can continue to grow our reputation as a place that you're going to learn things that you might not normally learn elsewhere. Every time that we have a show, I lead a series of actor warm-ups that come from years of actor training. So the things that I do in my warm-ups aren't things that you'll get from anywhere else. So our actors actually get an education and they're learning the craft. And I've got the years of practical experience as well as theoretical experience with the PhD to find ways to continue to poke and prod the actors into finding things that they may have never worked before. I would also like to continue to push the Greek and the importance of the Greek plays. Almost everything that we do on a stage is somehow connected to one of the Greek stories.
Oh yeah, I mean, we don't have much in the way of Greek. I mean, sometimes we'll see places like Gannon or other university-type settings, you know, go in with a Greek tragedy, normally maybe a comedy. But you know, the other types of theaters, we rarely see those. And something, you know, where maybe you could go to an off-Broadway selection. You know, you're not going to see a touring Greek show come through Erie. It's going to be, you know, a larger musical, and it's going to be a larger musical.
Well, with the Greek plays, you need to have a pretty strong historical knowledge of who these characters are and what they represent, because so many of them dealt with specific stories, but they can be tied to almost any contemporary idea. One of the plays, Greek plays, that it seems every couple decades has a renaissance is the Bacchic, because it deals with that idea of reason and intellect over emotion and feeling. Which one should lead? Is it better to be led by emotion and the love of the moment, or by pure reason and doing what's right even if it doesn't feel right, just because it's the logical thing to do?
Now, are you interested in any other types of classics? I mean, we mentioned Greek heavily. I mean, Roman works, you know, maybe some Elizabethan or Jacobean era that isn't Shakespeare, because that tends to get you a little bit more, people are treading onto those normally.
I don't know that we'll hit those terribly often, because they tend to require a lot more as far as scenery and costumes, whereas the Greek plays already tend to transcend time. You can adapt them fairly easily. The Romans, I think you could do that very well. The Romans tend to be the same basic stories, but a little bloodier for the most part. But with the Elizabethan stuff, I think that that's still better suited for universities than for community theaters. And like you mentioned with the Shakespeare, Gannon's got the Summer Shakespeare Festival. All-in-Act does at least one Shakespeare a year. Those are being done already. We don't want to come in and say, well, here, we think we can do it better. They've got the market for it. There's plenty of other theater that's quality that's available, that I think we can continue to look at things that they wouldn't do.
Right. I mean,